And now, a native podcast with Matt and Zach.
And welcome back to another episode of A Native Podcast with Matt and Zach. I am Zach, and with me as always is Matt. And I got to start it off that way as always and say, Matt, buddy, how we doing today?
Doing pretty good, man. We are deep into the fall time. The weather has shifted. The leaves are bright orange.
Oh yeah,
The rain is upon us. It's actually one of my favorite times of year. So
really. I don't like the fall for a couple reasons. Outside there, look at because it's like, yeah, it's 50 degrees, and it's like, yeah, it's not that cold. Whereas like in the spring, that 50 degrees feels warm because you've been cold all winter.
yeah, I
You know,
should clarify it's my third favorite. Spring is my least favorite.
oh, that's fair.
So winter and summer are my top two, the two extremes.
I feel you. I feel that. I like summer. I like spring. I like the warm weather, more particularly. Fall's just kind of, yeah, like you said, the rain, the gloominess. But I like
Yeah.
football. I like the stuff that comes with the fall.
Right, right,
It's hard, there's four seasons. You go rank them, they're still in the top four. You know what I mean?
right. That is a good point.
Yeah. And we're talking about a place today, actually, that probably I would say arguably experiences all four seasons there in Yakima Nation. You do get the winter and the snow, you do get the
Yep.
hot summers out there just because they're east enough from that range, that Cascade range.
Yeah,
Uh,
they're on that east side where you're getting four seasons, like you said, and their mountains get snow. They're far enough north with some altitude, and those Mount Adams, is right there. And yeah, and then their summers are a little hot, being on drier on the east side, less rain. There's less
right.
rain than over like on the west side where I live, for example.
No, exactly. So you get
Yeah.
more of like, yeah, the true season where it's like a fall day and clear sky where like you're saying Corvallis there, or not Corvallis, Salem there, you're
Yeah.
getting that cloud coverage.
Yep. No, exactly.
No, it's good. And it's exciting. We're going to talk about the Yakima Nation, kind of what we do here on a native podcast. If you're not familiar with us, is we like to talk about tribes, treaties, Native American topics, subjects, interview Native American people who worked in Indian country, all the above, you know what I mean? They just kind of that Indian country guide 101 guide is like what we like to call it. If you're interested, and just kind of learning some stuff about Indian people, who we are, Native people, Indigenous people, right? So all the different terms. We have we have episodes that talk about that and go into the details of kind of some of the topics that we cover and we chat about. Today is one of our reoccurring themes: treaties, tribes. Right? We have tribes. We have the Yakima tribe today. They are in Washington. They are the largest land-based tribe in Washington, I believe. Right?
Yeah, yeah, they're in that south central part of the state. And they have a pretty good size reservation too. It's pretty big, actually.
Oh yeah, and I'll get into that too when we read here too, the about us. But
Um,
before we get going, Matt, I gotta ask you, do you have anything for us? Any fun facts to get us going?
yeah, this one's a little bit different, this one, but it's relatable to what we're talking about in the sense of indigenous people of the Americas. A lost city was recently discovered, a Mayan lost city in the jungle of southern Mexico. This is a very significant find for showing like people have been in the Americas for much longer.
Oh yeah.
Like it helps up here even too with saying like the mounds and those. I mean, I'm not going to go too far into it. Basically, they're showing or they're saying that that contains 6,600 structures
Wow.
in this area of the jungles in southern Mexico, which was a Mayan area and still is. There's still Mayan people there today that live in. If you've ever gone to Cancun and go into the jungle, those are Mayan communities that live there
Right.
today. But yeah, it was a really, if you've seen this series, Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix, they highlight this area in the last episode of this new season.
Oh wow.
In this particular area where they're talking about, I saw on the news. It's near Campeche, Mexico. But yeah, just again, indigenous peoples have been here much longer than
Oh no, I agree. I
know,
think the
like
European history books kind of when you think about that, right? And then it even just it says, yeah, that's 5,000 years that, all the Bering Land Strait, all that stuff, all those
All that,
people try and talk about, it's like, hey, the Sioux people say they came out of Wind Cave.
right?
You know what I mean? Like, who's to say? You weren't here. You don't know.
Right. Yeah, and all those mounds back east, and how old are those really? Like those are very old, I think.
Omar, yeah, no,
Yeah.
exactly. Um,
So
no, and we're gonna talk about that today. I First thing I think with the Yakima Nation, that's what we're going to dive into, the Yakima tribe there. They are a confederated tribes and bands. They have I believe it was a treaty of 1856. I want to say 55, 56 is when they signed their
yep.
treaty. The first chief, when you go to the Yakima Nation website, right, and you go to the About Us page, right, they talk about the first chief of the Yakima Nation, 1856 to 1861. So for 5 years there. Chief Spencer's tribal name was Tapa Shah. Shaha. Is it Tapa Shaha? Tahpashah, right?
Something like that. Yeah. I
Yeah.
want to
And interpreted to sharpshooter. He was the chief of the Clicky Tats and appointed at the original Yakima Agency in White Swan, Washington. He was confirmed by J.W. Namesmith, Superintendent of Indian Affairs for the Washington, Oregon Territory in 1856. He was also appointed to U.S. officials since Chief Kamiakin refused to come onto the reservation. Chief Spencer was paid $500 per year and at the end of his appointment was given an officer's sword. So kind of the first native chief. And
Wow.
the land upon central Washington Plateau along the Columbia River reside tribal people called the Yakimas. The Cascade Mountains shelter this central portion from marine showers. The rolling foothills and Yakima River are the eastern border. Due due west in majestic glory is Pahto, Pahto, 12,307 feet high. It is one of 5 cascade volcanoes that dot the landscape from California to Washington. Her snow melts through canyons, forests, meadows, valleys to provide to our people. The tribal people comprising of the Yakama Nation have lived in the area since the beginning of time. They have used the entire land base from the lowlands around the Columbia River to the snow-peaked Cascade Mountains. Yakima people spent the coldest months in the winter villages generally located on the valley floor, a place with a relatively moderate climate. A reliable source of wood and water and protection from cold winds can be found there. Villages were located on or near waterways in places where a variety of resources could be obtained, including deer, elk, fish, riparian, and desert plants and animal resources. In the springtime, as soon as the first edible greens appeared above the ground, tribal people began moving across the countryside for fresh food resources. The melting snow would be followed upland and edible roots collected as they matured. Some tribal people would go to the rivers to fish. Others would remain in the mountains, following the maturing plants upslope, ending with the huckleberry harvest in the fall. At the times, foods would be either stored or transported back to the winter village from both the mountains and the rivers, and the people would settle in, once more living on stored foods and occasional fresh meat until the next spring. Bordering the reservation, the Yakima River flows southward from the Cascade Mountains to the Columbia River. Along the river, there is a pass, a gap in the Atuhanum Ridge called Union Gap. The Yakima River flowed through this area before the ridge existed. The Toppenish Basin is shaped like a scoop and is open to the east. The higher sides of the scoop are the Otahanam Ridge and the North Toppenish Ridge to the south, and the Last Horse Plateau to the west. Located along eastern slopes of the Cascade Mountain Range, the Yakima Nation Forest consists of 600,000 acres of timberland lands. All this for future generations yet unborn according to the teachings of the elders. Um, they have a map here too, and I'm gonna pull it up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me see. What I want to do is do this. I want to pull the map up, but I want to read about it as well. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to pull it up on a different page so I can share that with you. So I'm going to share screen.
Go ahead.
Yakama Nation. You see that right there? That's the seated
There
there.
we go. Yeah.
It shows that it included all the way over to Ritzville down to Tri-Cities, it looks like, Richland there.
Right.
And then you have Wapato, Toppenish, kind of the areas that already exist. The mountains, they had all those Cascade Mountains.
Yeah.
Mountains.
All that up there at Ellensburg and Leavenworth in the Cascades there too. Wenatchee. Wenatchee is one of the bands that got put there. There's 14 bands in the Yakama Nation, including the Yakima tribe. It's one of those, right, where they named it all after one, but there's like 14 of them.
Right.
Um,
Exactly. And that's another way of people trying to hurt natives, right? Back then, was to say, rather than say there was 14 tribes or 18 tribes, or whatever, made up these nations, right? These confederacies, they're going to say, no, you're just one, right? And then that one becomes, 574, but then they try and erase those 574, right?
right. No, and you can see their landscape was very varied because you have the mountains and forest, but then you have kind of the grasslands and then the desert kind of too, a little bit in there.
And I'm going to argue they probably had buffalo out here on that Columbia Plateau.
Mhm.
When you're driving right here from that Eltopia, Cooley City, all that stuff right there, when you work your way south here to Tri-Cities, like I could totally see buffalo living in
Well,
there.
and they're finding with Eastern Oregon and Eastern Washington, there's evidence that there were buffalo, more and more evidence of that with bones and stuff. So,
All the way down there to Bonneville, in the Dalles Dam. Yeah, and they kind of were the north side when you take the Umatilla, right? And that Warm Springs Reservation, right? Those tribes, they were the south side of the Columbia.
yeah.
So
Yeah. I have one too that yours was good for the geography. I think,
right.
and this one I'll kind of show more of the broader area.
No, we'll talk about that because right here, when you talk about the Yakama Nation, right, when you talk about that map, right, the land ceded from the federal government during the 1855 treaty signed included over 12 million acres of land. But tribal elders have said that their distance of travel sometimes took them as far north as Canada and as far south as California. The reserved portion of the tribal people's original homeland is where the tribes and bands were moved to. Tribal leaders reserved the right to fish, hunt, and gather all of the tribe's traditional foods on the reservation, as well as the ceded area. Although the treaty was signed on June 9th, 1855, it did not become valid until ratified on March 8th, 1859 by the U.S. Senate and proclaimed law by the president on April 18th, 1859. And just 1 month after the treaty was signed by Governor Stevens through the Northwest newspapers, declared all ceded lands open and available for white settlement. So that pink area, the governor of Washington at the time opened it up for white settlement 1 month after the treaty was signed.
Oh wow.
Wow. Yeah.
That's crazy.
I'm going to actually show a video right now.
Okay. Yeah,
Realtree puts this video on. They are a camo brand, actually, a hunting brand, but it's about hunting. And I think it kind of goes in hand with the ceded lands because the kid actually talks about hunting on some of the ceded lands.
Oh wow. Cool. Sounds good.
The world's really not that stressful when you're up here. Nothing's stressful. It's quiet. You can't hear anything but the wind, the birds. In the morning, you get this sense of feeling where You started a new life every day. You start this new life.
Put all this back there.
We're gonna move that in the Raptor. Yeah.
What do the mountains mean to me as a Native American man? I believe the mountains are everything.
You ain't got nothing, you only have one reed?
I believe if the Yakimas did not have the mountains, it would be very stressful living.
So we driving all the way there from here? Or?
No. We're stopping down at this, so we're going
And when we come up here, we're able to clear our minds, clear our hearts, talk to one another, talk to the forest. In some sense, we're reset our hearts, and when we hunt and we fish, we clear our minds up here.
I see it 4 inches. 4 inches right and 4 up maybe.
I believe that the snow is very important to us as far as the change in the seasons and knowing what comes next. Historically, us as Yakima, we would follow the animals when the winter would start. They would see it as them moving camp and moving their teepees with the animals. Us as in the modern era, we do the same. Nowadays we have our own homes we go back to at the end of the night, but we still move with the animals in the same way. As the animals move down the hill, our hunting grounds move down the hill. As they go to their wintering grounds, we move with them.
We all evolved into the same type of people. It was always about hunting. That was the only thing that really could fill our souls, you know what I mean? Like all the beautiful things that you can do in the world. Like we go to Vegas or been to a lot of places that were fun, but we're always racing home to go hunting. That was life for us when we were growing up.
I mean, we gotta preserve our way of life, preserve the gifts and the rights that were handed down to us. My father was arrested when he was 16 years old for shooting a calf elk on a ceded property. Growing up, I seen him have to fight for a lot of rights like that, a lot of hunting rights. We as hunters actually benefited from the fights that they had to take on. As a Native American, you gotta keep your tradition going. You gotta keep standing up for your rights and hunting and doing the things you were born to do, you're taught to do by your ancestors.
Hey, there's an elk. I see an elk up there. I see a cow elk up here.
No way.
Yep. Right there.
Stay still, then don't move.
All right.
She's watching us.
Do you see it?
Oh yeah, she's jogging.
We're chasing a bull right now. Just gotta decide if we're gonna go left or right. It might just be sitting up in one of these whole pockets right up here. There's a bigger bull up top.
hard to use.
When you're cutting your meat, taking care of your animal, it really takes care of you and your mind. I hope someday that I could teach a family or a couple kids how to hunt and they could provide for their family later on.
Oh, they come up this river all the way here.
I'll continue to be in these mountains as long as I live, and I'll continue to hunt. I'll continue our traditional ways, and we'll continue to teach the best way we know how. We'll keep our way of life together as long as we can.
All right, so that was the video on the elk hunting in with the Yakima tribe there, and really good video, I think, done by Realtree. Just a good vibe, definitely.
Yeah, really, it shows what some of the tribal men that go out hunting and fishing. It's like, that's very important to them to continue that tradition, it seems like.
Well, I guess one big thing with it showing, and I maybe we do a short or a video of some sort and we post it to the YouTubes and maybe even the Spotify, right? Since you can do a video podcast. But I think when you and Colton go hunting here, we need to do kind of a similar video like that, just because we are doing our traditional cultural ways of hunting, right? When we're hunting together like this, but we're using modern methods, guns, trucks, etc., the clothing, but we're doing it in the way the states and the federal laws, right, have it in place nowadays for us. We can't go out and do it,
Right. Well, and it's kind of cool if you think about, I just realized this, but where we're going, you could argue all three of us going have some tie traditionally to Eastern Montana. To a little bit, you know what I mean? Shared hunting grounds.
I would argue, just because I know a little more of your family history, that you guys might have been down more in Wyoming, Nebraska, way.
Our band was, yes.
Yeah. But Oglala people for sure
traveled long distance.
Yes. And no, and to be honest, knowing natives, man, there's not a native that is like, I don't want to go anywhere. They'll get in a car and go 500 miles.
Oh yeah.
I feel like that stems from, back in the day. Yeah, we're going to hike all the way to New Mexico, go down here.
Right. Well, it's the plains were nomadic, and with the Yakima, they're more the plateau, which I want to show that other map here in a second, but they're kind of more of a semi-nomadic. They're kind of in this middle ground between the coastal tribes that were more sedentary village. And then you move east and they get more nomadic the further east you go.
No, exactly. And I think, I believe, are the Yakimas some of the ones that can come hunt bison in Yellowstone?
What's funny is they're not, but I almost could argue they should fight for that, because Umatillas do.
I mean, arguably, if the Umatillas were, they probably were too, right? Like, I know Salish Kootenai's in that one too, right?
Yep.
Tribes that I'm Googling it right now.
Oh, go ahead. If you want me, I just wanted to show that.
Pull up your map. Yeah, no. Yeah.
It'll show what we're talking about with the plateaus right now. So it's good timing here. So let me.
Nez Perce, I know for sure. Coville.
Yep. Coeur d'Alene's did, but they haven't fought for it yet.
Oh, yeah, but I'm curious. Yeah, they came over. I'm curious. They should fight for it. Every fucking tribe up here in the Northwest, basically in Washington, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, Oregon, that kind of.
Right.
Even into Canada. Is it showing? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see it? So the brown is just the Columbia River Basin, but that purple is what you showed a map of earlier. of how the
Right.
Yakima is specific, but this is everything west of this is the Columbia Plateau culture region essentially, and it's all in the brown.
Well, and see, that's when you look at that cultural region, right? You take down south below that, that is your Warm Springs. Then you
Yep.
take your Nez Perce, Idaho,
They're
Shoshone
like,
area. Yep.
yeah,
And then your Salish, Kootenai, that
western
inland version, right?
yeah.
Right there, up north. That's exactly your Columbia Plateau regions.
Mhm.
Those, I would argue four larger cultural groups which remain today, right? Your Nez Perce, your Kootenai, and they probably we probably could give them better names than what is given to them. When you talk, and I mean, I guess we have like the Columbia Plateau region, right? It's that
Right.
this larger section, and where you look at this map, they were coming into Yellowstone there to hunt those
Yeah.
bison. So these tribes should have access to that, right? When you look at the Plains tribes in Montana, right? You do that big map, it's going to, it opens up into Canada same way. Just like us Little Shell, us Blackfeet were up there. The Sioux would, and then I think we get more out onto the plains, especially where the Sioux were, you could argue that the Sioux were almost their own regional group on the plains if you really were to break up the plains. You have like your Montana, Wyoming plains and southern Canada there. And then like your southern plains, like your New Mexico, Colorado, right? Like that.
Like Cheyenne and Kiowa and all those guys. Yeah.
Exactly. But that Sioux range, in my opinion, is right there in the middle in that North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, right on the open plain, right? When you break open the plains.
The open prairie. Yeah, no, this is good. And what's interesting, you see my little cursor here. So the Columbia Plateau even includes the Klamath Lakes people, which is down here even. Because
I agree, but I would argue just based on knowing the Klamath and what they stand for more in the salmon culture, I think
yeah,
that's where they
they're
get grouped
kind of
into that.
coastal in a sense, but it's weird. Do you have some weird oddball areas like that? Because I've seen ones that go down here and ones like this that don't. But
Right.
this
No,
one,
I agree with what you're saying.
this map is the Columbia River Fish Commission's map, which is Yakima, Warm Springs, Nez Perce, and Umatilla.
No, I like that. I
It's
think that's a
for,
good map because you're highlighting right here the Columbia River, the Snake River, where they
Yep.
come right there at Tri-Cities.
Snake
And
River, Tri-Cities. Yep. And then what I liked about the hunting video was the Yakima, they're a classic salmon plateau tribe, which is, you talk mostly about salmon a lot with these ones, but it showed that they hunt in their mountains too.
they have
And-
elk. They had elk. That's the
Yeah.
shitty thing too. When you look at like some of these places, we had those resources, and then the European contact, the white settlement, ruined it.
Right. But
No.
anyway, yeah, I just wanted to show the broader kind of,
No,
so
I like
that worked
that.
well because you showed their specific area and then
No, I like that. I hope our viewers listening on Spotify video or YouTube can see this and enjoy it as well. Did you know there's a new native apparel company?
No, I did not.
It's called Shop LS 574, named after the 574 federal tribes and the Little Shell descendancy of its founders.
Wow, that's really cool, man.
It is. It is becoming a spot to order native apparel by and for natives, working with native designers and teams to help best represent Indian country.
That's awesome, dude.
For sure. Now make sure to go pick up some Native podcast swag as well as other native gear while shopping at shopls574.com.
Oh yeah, and do not forget to use code ANP10 to save on your next order.
That's ANP10. Hey Matt, did you know there's a tribally owned net company?
No, I did not.
Not only are they tribally owned, but Blue Ribbon Nets also creates totally sustainable products. With Blue Ribbon Nets, not only are you getting quality nets, but even eco-friendly ones as well.
That's awesome, dude.
It sure is indeed. Make sure to use code RUGAROO10 on your next Blue Ribbon Net order to save. Again, the code is RUGAROO10, RUGARU10.
I am definitely getting a Blue Ribbon Net now.
Tune in every Tuesday to hear your favorite native podcast.
That's right. A Native Podcast has new episodes every week, ranging from boarding schools to Indian child welfare.
Not only that, but we have Indian country covered from Maine to California and Florida to Alaska, Hopi to Blackfeet and Choctaw to Tlingit, and all those Crees in between.
And all you other natives and non-natives out there, we want to remind you to tune in this Tuesday to A Native Podcast.
Here's this is on the About Us a little bit more, right? This to me is the opening, right? Located in southwestern Washington state is the 1,130,000 acre reservation that is home to the Yakama or Yakima Indian Nation. And it's spelled there. The reason I say that, it's spelled with a Yakima and Yakma. So they use both spellings. But I've seen them themselves use it more Yakama, right?
No, exactly.
The reservation was granted to the Yakima in a treaty signed in 1855 by Governor Isaac Stevens of the Washington Territory and representatives of the Cayuse, Umatilla, Walla Walla, Nez Perce, and Yakima tribes. Although the treaty called for a period of 2 years to allow the various tribes to migrate and resettle on their new reservation, Governor Stevens declared Indian lands open for white settlers a mere 12 days after the treaty was signed. A Yakima chief, Kamiakin, called upon the tribes that had been duped to forcibly oppose this declaration, but not before they had built their strength to oppose the military. Things moved too quickly, and shortly thereafter, a series of raids, counter-raids, reciprocal atrocities began. The uprising became known as the Yakima War. The war continued until 1859, when the last phase, known as the Coeur d'Alene War, ended. The Yakima accepted their reservation and still dwell there today. In addition to the Yakima were some Paiutes, a few members of other tribes that reside on the Yakima reservation. The Yakima Nation, which is about 6,300 strong, has a flag that shows the borders of the reservation in a white sky and against a sky blue background. Within the map's depiction of Mount Adams, an impressive mountain that lies within the reservation, the mountain is sacred to the Yakima. Soaring above the mountains, it is a eagle depicted in full color. Not only is the eagle sacred, but shares a lifestyle with many of the Yakima who earn their living fishing for salmon in the waters of the Columbia River and its tributaries. Above the eagle is the morning star, a symbol of guidance and leadership, and anchoring around Mount Adams for 14 gold stars and 14 eagle feathers, honoring the bands of the Yakima Nation. The feathers represent 14 chiefs that signed the Treaty of 1855, while the 14 stars represent the confederated tribes and bands of the Yakima Indian Nation. The tribe's name and the date of the treaty are complete the design. In 1955, members of the Old Toppenish Longhouse, Toppenish is the term the Yakima used to apply to themselves, adopted a flag to represent the Yakima people of the Yakima Reservation. As long as the river flows, the flag was adopted at the time was similar to the present flag of the Yakima Nation, but did not include the reservation map, nor did it have the writing on it. It is obviously that the flag adopted in 1955, the centennial of the treaty signing, was a basis for the current flag. In the mid-1990s, the Yakima Nation renamed itself to Yakima, the Yakama, more closely reflecting the proper pronunciation in their native tongue. The only change made to the flag at the time of the name change was the name. The flag above is correct, exempt for the name Yakima, which is now spelled Yakima. And this is on there on the yakima.com when you go to learn about them.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, they also have their own license plates, and I've seen them a lot around here, even just traveling and stuff.
No, I have too, actually, especially
And
driving that road.
driving that gorge. They and you and I have noticed that both Yakima and Warm Springs on Google Maps, they have a lot of land by the river again now.
Yeah, you do see them get some of that land back slowly, like you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. They I also saw that they won some court case. I want to say it was a few years ago where that southwest corner of the reservation, they were given back that land, and there's a wildlife refuge there too, by a town called Glenwood, and it's called Cowboy Lake Wildlife Refuge. But there's a little corner pocket that they reacquired there.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that was from a couple years ago.
That is cool.
And now we'd like to take a pause and bring to you music on a Native podcast with Matt and Zach. This is where we feature Native American artists and musicians and their music. This week, our song comes from the 2013 Yakima Nation Round Dance, Clayton Chief and the Black Lodge Singers, I'm Back.
It's always us three sitting together now. We must be friends together, right?
And that was Clayton Chief and the Black Lodge Singers, I'm Back. We'd like to thank you for listening to music on a Native podcast. Now, back to the podcast.
People ask the 14 bands and tribes, right?
Yeah.
They are the Ka, Miltpaw, the Clicky Tat, the Clinket, Kawasase, Liawas, Ochikotes, Palouse, Piscos, Seapatkat, Skyx, Skinpaw, Wentashpam, Wishram, and the Yakima.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Palouse that's what that Palouse Falls, that waterfall is named after them in eastern part there.
And they're out in that more eastern, like you're saying, that more eastern area.
Right. Yeah, it's more sagey, kind of like there's some rivers, like that little river flows into the Snake out there. That's where that falls goes.
Right.
And but I had something here too. The name for the Yakima tribe of the Yakima Nation, the Yakima band, they called themselves Wap Tailmem, meaning people of the narrow river. When I read that, I was like, if you've driven through the city of Yakima or by the reservation, the Yakima River is a small, windy, narrow river that comes out of the hills. And so people of the narrow river seems very fitting right there.
Yeah.
They lived too in these they were teepees, but they were made from like tule mats.
Oh wow.
Part of the plateau, yeah, the ones that lived along the Columbia, they lived in these tule mat teepees. And they have examples of that at their museum in Toppenish, Washington, on the reservation too.
That's awesome. I saw that they had kind of like huts too that they kind of also lived in that was similar to the longhouse.
Yep. Yeah, like those were their more permanent homes. And then when they traveled, they used the tule mat teepees.
Right.
So that's why I say they're like a semi-nomadic people.
Looking at some of their tribal enterprises, right? They have the Yakima Nations Network radio, Yakima Power, Yakima Forest Products, the Legends Casino and Hotel, the Yakima Nation Cultural Center, the Yakima Mart, the Yakima Nation Credit Enterprise, which is a credit loan.
Wow.
The Yakima Nation Wildlife Resource Management, Yakima Nation Land Enterprise, Yakima Nation Gaming Commission, and Yakima Nation Fruit and Produce.
Oh, wow.
So they have opportunities for tribal members, different things going on as well, which is always good to have.
Yeah, that last one, they do own a lot of farms through that valley there. Yakima Valley is just a big farming area in general, but it doesn't surprise me the tribe got on board too.
Right. On their website too, they have a word of the day, but it hasn't been updated since 2023.
Oh.
But they got a lot of good stuff on the Yakima Nation if you're curious about them. They even have a tribal school.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they play 8-man football.
Really?
Yeah, there was a guy we knew growing up at a smaller school we went to in middle school. He coached there for a year, Yakima Nation tribal school football team.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a really short, few sentences here about so Yakima and several of those other Columbia ones, Celilo Falls always gets brought up.
Right.
Because that was such an important site to many tribes in that region. But it says here from their website, Celilo Falls, located on the Columbia River east of the Dalles, Oregon, was a well-known trading area and sacred fishing grounds of our people. Celilo was flooded in 1957 with the completion of the Dalles Dam. The federal government's decision to build the dam disregarded the fishing grounds and the YM people's opposition. Their museum there in Toppenish recreated the ancient setting of Celilo Falls. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, just a little short blurb on it. And, people are familiar with that site there, I think.
Yeah.
So
you're telling me that Celilo there, that is Yakima.
That's what Warm Springs too, arguably those two, right? Both sides of the river. Yeah. But
well, you said the river, the map that you took your map from was the Columbia Tribal Interfish Commission, right?
Yep.
And when you go to their website and they talk about who the Yakama Nation are, right? They talk about what they're doing in within the fisheries, right? And I think that's very important. You talk about the Klamath, right? Now they got rid of the dams down there. The tribe, which uses an interdisciplinary and sustainable approach to care for the land and natural resources, operates a fisheries program with approximately 40 employees. Among its fisheries projects is its unique work with the U.S. Department of Energy and use abandoned intake settling ponds at the Hansford Nuclear Reservation to acclimate about 500,000 fall Chinook juveniles before releasing them into the Columbia. The concrete pools were tested and found to have no contamination. The Yakima Indian Nation co-manages the Columbia, Wind, White Salmon, Klickitat, Yakima, Wenatchee, Methro, Entat, and Okanagan rivers. The tribe has a usual and accustomed fishing places in many locations in both inside and outside the Columbia River Basin. Salmon continue to be the lifeblood for over the 10,000 plus Yakima tribal members.
Oh, wow.
And Mount Adams is the one they refer to as Pato, P-A-H-T-O, Mount Pato.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering there.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, they're really good. They got a lot of good tribes. You know, when you talk about kind of what they have going on, like you said, I mean, it's good stuff. They definitely, tourism in that area is there. You go to, there's another good website called plateauportal.libraries.wsu. I believe it's Washington State set it up. And they have they have a collection of Yakima history on here. They have, you know, like here's photos of the Columbia Indian River Camp. They have, you know, a report of the Yakima Agency. So just different things like that they have kind of an archives to, if you're checking out information and wanting to get involved there. But I don't know, is there anything else you may have on the Yakima people?
Yeah, this is true for the Yakima, but also for all the plateau tribes. If you've been to any native gathering, and for our viewers, the women that wear those like basket cap hats,
oh, okay,
that is from the plateau region. And the Yakima, I've always seen Yakima people at any event out here, and the women wear their traditional basket caps, and that's very much a plateau cultural part of their regalia, part of what they wear. So
nice.
Woven, you know, you've seen those ones I'm referring to. Yeah,
I have. No, they're
and they're beautiful.
You see the cedar ones out on the coastal tribes, very
Yep.
similar. Yeah,
very similar.
Well, I mean, that's kind of it we have for the Yakima for you folks today. Any final words, Matt?
Yakama Nation, they're the largest tribe in the Pacific Northwest out of Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. They are the largest in the PNW. So very big group, got a lot of businesses, as you were reading off. Like, they have a lot of stuff going, strong fisheries program, probably one of the biggest tribal ones in the Northwest.
Right.
So
and a lot of people to manage when you think about that, you know, and they have a lot of land to manage too. So definitely a lot to learn from them. Definitely dive in further if you are interested into the Yakima tribe. Please check out our podcast wherever you may get that: iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, WhatsApp, iHeart, wherever that may be. Definitely give us the thumbs up, give us a like, give us a share. It really does help us out. If you have an email for the podcast, a question, or want to be featured, you can email us at gng@gng.net. But you know, until next time, everybody, bye-bye.
I know chiefs, I know riders from the east, I know educated natives down to picket in the streets, middle fingers to police, fuck you, we come in peace. I know red-skinned hippies that be giving me the creeps. I know beauty, I know beach, I know savages and freaks, and I know a couple cousins even bougier than me. No, ain't elite, bougie native, yes indeed. Art exhibit to the club, and we roll it 20 deep. Copper on my neck, Gold on my ring, feather on my hat, skin stitched chin, 100 warriors on my back. They be drumming when I sing, man, there ain't no way around it.
A Native Podcast is produced by G&G Advertising and Quartz Lake Productions.